Yeah.
I mean, these are people who were 40 years old then who couldn't get a job. Now, that was 20 years ago. Now they're 60. I suppose they're waiting for Social Security.
Yeah.
And for them, it's probably around 66 and a half, 67 years old if they want to get the full amount that they can get. And and so there's many people who have dropped out of the system. And they're not being counted unless you count U6 and then subtract the birth-death ratio, and then you get 22.6%. We have terrible unemployment. You know what the secret is?
We need
getting employment. It's pretty simple.
We need to have jobs.
We lost. What's that?
We need to have jobs, but there's so many impediments in the way. The government is in the way with all of these rules, regulations, taxes, that it's almost impossible to hire people today. Mark and I are looking at hiring people, if we can, for the expo and so forth. And the problem is that it's too complicated to hire people, so we just do everything ourselves. And
well, look, for the last 11 years, we, as a nation, have lost 11.7 million jobs. We've lost 440,400 or more companies and corporations. Why? Free trade, globalization, offshoring, outsourcing.
Yeah, all those things all those things that we were told would be great for us. All those lies from the Clinton administration. Ross Perot, by the way, I have his old car in my garage at the farm. His old Porsche 928. He's a pretty cool guy. He was right on the money when he said there'll be a giant sucking sound going to Mexico, and that sucking sound will be our jobs. He was absolutely right.
Well, that's true, and foreign manufacturers continue to open up new factories there. They were just in central Mexico 2 weeks ago. There was a commitment by Mazda to spend $500 million building a plant and employing 4,000 people. That's a substantial investment, but it's going on in Mexico and in China and India and Argentina and Brazil, and I'm sure other places as well. It's killing us. We can't compete.
Yeah, and not only...
And the reason we can't compete is that our jobs are being stolen out from underneath of us, and the transnational corporations, which are American-based, when they make profits doing that offshore, they don't have to pay any taxes unless they bring the money back to the United States. So if they made $1 million and you kept on investing it, at the end of 10 years, you might have $50 million.
Bob, I bought a copy of QuickBooks on the internet, and I bought it on eBay, and it was a fair price, and I paid for it, and it took a couple weeks to get it. And when I got it, I thought, this box that it's shipped in really looks like it's recycled. So I opened it up, and I thought the colors were just a shade off of the Intuit Company's colors. And I like the Intuit Company, by the way. So I called Intuit, and I said, I have a feeling that I have a copy that's a counterfeit copy of QuickBooks. Well, I spent about an hour on the phone with them, and by the time I was done, I did have a copy that was counterfeit. It was shipped from mainland China, so eBay's involved, PayPal's involved. But the point is, there are commercials on the mainstream media saying if you think your neighbor is using pirated software, report them. Well, heck, this stuff is being shipped directly from China through the U.S. Postal Service, and it's counterfeit. So we're not stopping it there, but we're supposed to report our neighbors. Our government's in the way, Bob.
Our government's involved.
Amen.
They want to destroy the United States financially and economically to force the people, not only here, but in England and in Europe, to accept world government, and that's what this is all about.
Bob, did I hear you right saying our government is involved?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought you said.
Bob, I believe it to be true because there was a report that came out last week. I don't know if you saw it, but Apple is in China now selling their iPhone, and they have stores. Well, unbeknownst to them, there were knockoff Apple stores in other parts of China that the store looks just like Apple, the employees dress like Apple employees, and they're selling knockoff iPhones. Now, how does that happen? Unless our government's involved and looks the other way.
Of course it is, and so is it the Chinese government.
Yeah, they are too. There's no doubt about it. Well, I tell you what, it's frustrating as you know what, and we'll talk about that more in a few minutes with our guest from international forecaster Bob Chapman. I'm Mark Wright. I'm here with Vincent Finelli, and we'll be right back. Thank you for listening to USA Prepares. I am Mark Wright. I'm here with the original survival economist, Vincent Finelli, and on the line is international forecasters Bob Chapman. Bob, I think the last show we talked about the inevitable QE3 coming. You know, I thought about this the other day, and I think QE3 is a WMD. I think it's a weapon of mass devaluation. You know, the Fed, they take a buck, they shoot it full of steroids, and the banks leverage it to the hilt. You know, more debt. I call it steroid banking. And what happens? More speculation, which is the mother of all evil. It's systemic, it's malignant, it's global. It's like cancer, Bob. How are we going to fight back? How are we going to leverage that disease back in our favor?
You can't, under the present structure. And what has to happen is the system has to be purged. And if the system is not purged, the problem is not going to go away. And that is what they call Keynesian. No, I'll rephrase that. That is called classical economics, the antithesis of Keynesianism. And what they're doing is Keynesian economics, and they're throwing money in every which direction, mostly the first time around in the financial strata of society, not only here but throughout Europe as well, and in selected voluminous corporations. And that number we now find out is $116 trillion. I had quoted a figure of 13.8 trillion. This was 16 trillion. So it wasn't too far off because I didn't have a lot to work with, and I certainly didn't have their numbers. And so that's a business interest in certain areas for the time being. QE2 simply bailed out the federal government by buying Treasury and agency paper, bonds. Agency is Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, and FHA. And then they bought over $1 trillion worth of toxic waste from banks.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is QE3 going to be? Well, it's already started, incidentally. Started last week. They did $3 billion.
Okay.
And they'll start to talk about it between August the 15th and September 1, and they'll start the program in earnest and admit to it during the first 2 weeks of September. And, you know, I don't have any specific figures from government to tell me all these things. I got to back into everything.
You got to utilize those sources, don't you?
Well, I get some good sources, but still, it's not official. And I'm almost always right. And so they're going to have QE3. And instead of spending 1.7, they're going to have to spend about 2.3 trillion because there'll be no stimulus. So they have to stimuli the economy at the same time by the lousy paper, and that will show up about 2 to 2.5 years from now. And that'll be in the form of inflation. And by that time, inflation will be about 50%.
Bob, I've got some sources, and I call my sources. I have a friend who is in the coin business, and I call him every couple of weeks, and I want to get his take on what's happening. And what you're saying is playing out right now. I asked him what is happening with the supply in the greater Springfield market. I'm talking about Springfield and a 100-mile radius are surrounding Springfield, maybe 150 miles. The demand is very, very strong for U.S. silver dollars. Silver, 90% silver dollars. And it's very, very strong for 90% junk silver. Currently, there's a 10% premium on it, on junk silver and silver dollars. And here's what's happened. Silver dollars, yesterday when the price of silver was almost $1 lower, silver dollars, if they have holes in them, they're really damaged and they're not pretty at all, are $40 a piece. If you want a nice, semi-nice silver dollar, they're $45. And if you want a real nice silver dollar, they're $50. And if you wanted to buy a $1,000 face bag of silver dollars in the Springfield market, it's not available.
Well, I am a constant buyer of junk silver for two reasons. It's the cheapest way to buy silver, and everybody knows what it is.
Absolutely.
So you can use it to barter. I do have other things, but that's my favorite, has been for a long time. And those silver bags may become, in time, numismatic, because about 95% of the bags have been melted down over the last 30 years,
Yes.
since 1980. And so I think others are thinking the same way that I did. And, you know, the price varies from day to day, hour to hour, and we could be looking at spot to as much as 15 or 20%. So it all depends on where you're going and what time you go.
Bob, I was quoted about, somewhere around 3 years ago now, I was quoted about $13 for very, very nice silver dollars. Those same silver dollars are $50 in 3 years. That's incredible.
Well, I think it's going to continue.
I do too.
And we're looking at substantially higher prices. You just take today, the spot market. And now, mind you, today was a day when on the option expiration on gold and silver, they closed out today. And at $1,600 on gold, there were 22,000 contracts that wanted delivery. The comics has got a problem. But anyway, normally in a day before and the day before, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, you know, they usually try to suppress prices. Well, yesterday gold and silver were up. Today they were up again. Gold up $4.60 in the spot, and 34 cents on silver. And I've got a recent quote in the access market, which is August gold and September silver, and gold is up $8 and silver's up 60 cents. So what am I saying here? Let me tell you what happened very briefly. The market was rigged by the government as well as J.P. Morgan Chase, HSBC, Goldman Sachs, etc. They jacked up all the margin on silver, drove all the small and medium-sized people out, and they all lost their money.
They did.
And silver fell from $50 to $32.50. There's two ways on this thing. You saw it came down. You saw the damage.
Sure.
And those margins are still $42,000. So what did they create? They created a vacuum because there's nobody to sell.